to the Wrightcast podcast, a podcast to help actors find auditions and book roles. I'm your host, Ashley Scott Myers. Today we have Gunner Wright. Gunner is an actor living in Hollywood whom I had the pleasure of working with on one of my films called The Pinch. He's an excellent actor, really nice guy, and a real workhorse. In the interview, we're going to talk about many aspects of his career, including how he broke in, how he's been able to land so many voiceover gigs, especially for video games, and how he's been able to maintain a career now for many, many years. So stay tuned for that interview. If you want my free guide, 5 ways to find auditions and get cast, just go to www.thewrightcast.com/guide. Put in your email address and we'll send you the guide for free. We cover a wide range of topics in the guide to help you find opportunities, from booking theater auditions, going to Hollywood for pilot season, how to create a professional self-tape, how to find voiceover acting gigs in your town or city, how to find acting opportunities in indie and student films in your local area. The guide can certainly be helpful to any actor at any level, but we're putting an emphasis on trying to help actors who are outside of Hollywood. Again, if you'd like to find out more about this guide or get it, just go to thewrightcast.com/guide. So now let's dig into today's interview with Gunner Wright. Here is the interview. Welcome to the podcast, Gunner. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Ashley, it's my pleasure.
So to start out, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up and how did you get interested in the entertainment business?
You know, I was like so many people growing up with Friday night TV shows, Saturday morning cartoons. I grew up in Florida. My dad was in the motorcycle business, and I started off racing motorcycles. And my dad got promoted from Florida with a company called American Honda, which makes cars, but they also make motorcycles. Their corporate office is based in Torrance, just outside of LA. So Dad got promoted, and the whole family moved out to Los Angeles. And at that time, I had the decision going into my late teens, you know, am I going to try to go pro with racing motorcycles, or am I going to do something else? And I was actually blessed because that decision, in some ways, was made for me when we moved out here. That just like the entertainment industry, the motorcycle racing industry in America is Southern California. So I started working in motorcycle racing companies when I moved out here. But of course, being in LA, you realize real quick that just the nature of it, from the Paul Newmans and the Steve McQueens. I mean, every Hollywood actor wants to be a stunt guy, and so many people in our industry ride motorcycles. So by default, I'd go to a track, and even though I wasn't racing anymore, I still ride. And just very quickly, I met stunt people, and I met a handful of actors who, you know, rode motorcycles, and I was that guy because that was my background. And so very quickly, I just befriended a lot of people in our industry. And then through that, I started to do some motorcycle related, not stunt work, but just, I could smile and I could jump on a motorcycle for a brochure or something like that. And it just kept progressing to where I had a friend of mine whose father was Stanton Barrett, and David Barrett, an amazing talent in his own right, was a kid that was racing motorcycles, and then from motorcycle racing, because his father was in the stunt community. Matter of fact, his father doubled Steve McQueen in Papillon. I think he was, I don't know, maybe in his early 20s, but for this one long shot, I think it might be the cliff shot where Steve McQueen's jumping off the cliff. That was actually his father. So David, I think Burt Reynolds taught David how to swim in his pool. So David had come from that world and started to progress in his own right, from racing to stunts to second unit directing. And one of his first big gigs was, there was a TV show for Fox called Fast Lane. I think it was with director Mick G. And David was doing, I believe, second unit that day. And he called me and said, hey, you want to come to Warner Brothers? We're shooting this, blowing up some cars, and there's pretty girls, and we're going to be shooting on a lot. Do you want to come and check it out? I'm like, absolutely. So I show up, and as you can imagine, I fell in love. I didn't know what was going on. I saw explosions and cool cars and pretty people, and great food, and he was such a blessing for me. He was really, my the door opening to Hollywood. He's like, hey, he basically allowed me to kind of come back a few days. I ended up standing in for one of the actors.
Okay.
And then at that point, I knew I liked this. I didn't know what this was, but I wanted to do, it was something that I never knew really existed, because I'm like everybody else. I just saw the finished product. But here I am on a set, feeling that energy, which is kind of like racing, being on a racetrack. You get the sweaty palms, your heart rate's up, you get this energy. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I want to do this. And so there was a quick moment where I had an opportunity to do stunts, but I quickly decided, I spent my whole career, my whole life trying to avoid crashing and falling. So
yes.
Maybe I'll study acting with the opportunity of where it's appropriate. I can do stunt as an actor. But it was really David and a few other people that kind of opened the door for me, at least to see the peek behind the curtain. Which is really where the magic happens.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of your early credits, and maybe you can kind of guide us through how you got these credits. One of your first IMDb credits is a TV series, Wicked Games. You then did a video game, Dead Space, and it looks like you were on 90210, on the reboot of 90210. Maybe just walk us through. At this point, were you taking acting classes? Did you have an agent? How did you get these first couple of gigs?
Yeah, that's the thing, what I love about talking with you is you are just as much of an anomaly as I am, with the non-sexiness of what it takes to really make a living in our business. I didn't really have any sexy, one-hit wonder. It was, actually it was the opposite. I had started to build a career in the motorcycle industry here in LA, to where once I got a little taste of being on set and knowing what I was learning to know through guys like David, I'm like, okay, well, I think I want to go into this industry. I just don't quite know what to do. So I quit. I quit the motorcycle industry. And at that same time I quit, I literally get this audition. It had nothing to do with an agent, because of my motorcycle background, with a production company, ironically based in Atlanta, that was doing a motorcycle lifestyle television show. And they needed someone with motorcycle background, but who could talk on camera, especially with a teleprompter. And because of my background, they fly me out and I audition for this show. To be honest with you, I just think I was blessed. I could read the teleprompter. It was easy for me. Had you been trained
at all? Had you done some training with teleprompter? No. Like I wouldn't even know how to how to read it at all.
I'm literally being honest. I had a natural ability to just read it conversationally, as if you're giving me a script on my laptop and I'm talking to you. And so I don't want to say I booked, but I get hired to be the host on this short-lived show. And the money was decent, and I'm just excited. And in my weird mind, that naive ignorance, I'm like, oh, this is easy.
This is going to be an easy.
And now I'm in. until, and this is the best part, which is really what where the real love comes in, is that particular production company, something happened, the show gets canceled. I'm owed, a couple of paychecks, and now my savings is being depleted. I really just thought that show would lead to something else, And I just remember, as you can imagine, my parents, they don't really know the entertainment industry. They, my dad's in the motorcycle industry, and he's a big wig in that world. And he's like, what are you doing? Well, and I didn't have an answer of what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So there was some friction between my dad, my family, and myself. And now I'm staring down the barrel of what am I going to do? I'm owed money. The show's done. And to be honest with you, I grabbed my guitar. I'm living in Venice Beach, renting a buddy's guest house who's on a TV show. And all I know is I got a powered amp and my guitar, and I literally, sounds crazy, but I played the Venice Beach Strand. Back in those days, you didn't need to have a permit. I played for, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours a day, and I'd make $5 or $10. Enough to go to I could go to Tommy's and get a burger, some chili fries. And I literally did that. And there's a whole nother story of me playing music, but that was, I had, my father's a jack of all trades in a lot of ways. He's a heck of a musician, but he's that closet musician that, that's a whole nother story. But basically I played music, until that production check came, which was enough to front me for, a couple of months. And then I was blessed to be able to get some contract work through the motorcycle industry, to kind of keep me afloat as I was just trying to figure out what I'm going to do. Because unlike what you're asking me, like your agents and managers, I didn't have any of that, and I didn't know where to start. Mm-hmm. And as I had friends of mine that were actors at a pretty higher level, at a working level at that time, it's a double whammy because their own story is different. Some of them had a lot of struggles. The waiter, mm-hmm. That cliche of, breaking in. And then some of the other ones, were maybe models, runway models, or, commercial print models that had that great look that transitioned into acting. So, everyone's story is different. And, mm-hmm. Literally what kind of my first trajectory was, I auditioned through some circumstances. I auditioned to play guitar in a play. They just needed like a background band. And I'm not a great guitar player. I'm not a great musician, but mm-hmm. for this particular production, I booked that job, which I don't even think it paid anything. It was like a full week run. But then with that production company, it went from me playing the guitar to having a small role in the next run of production. And then like 2 years later, they had more money and a bigger budget, and they actually hired me to be the lead. Huh. And through that play, through the play where I was the lead, I got a manager. And then from that manager, I got a commercial agent. So it was really the play, and it wasn't anything sexy. It was just different mm-hmm. runs with different budgets. With more eyes seeing it, and really at that time I was taking some acting classes, but to be honest with you, some of the best acting was just doing that play. We would do, I think it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday runs, and then we would do two showings on Sunday. And that particular play, though, the script and the story changed just a bit. It was probably a 3-year run in different capacities. So that was wonderful. It was just wonderful live acting training and mm-hmm. practice in a lot of ways. Again, I don't even think I got paid, but I got a chance to do it in front of an audience, which, again, like racing anything, like, being on, you're on stage and there is no do-over. There's no, mm-hmm. Second take. It's just, mm-hmm. it is what it is. And so it was wonderful. And so with that training in a lot of ways would help when I had to do a 1 or 2 line commercial audition. You go in mm-hmm. and, it's for product X, and, you got to say this one thing or give them a look. And so it was really great because I started to book some commercial work as I was doing the play, which was wonderful because it pays great. And then every now and then I would get a chance to use some of my motorcycle skills, transitioning it to not a stunt car position, but for example, it's not easy to find an actor who can drive a car for camera. Mm-hmm. And I started taking some of that money and I started to take some precision driving courses just to have on my resume to be that actor for car company X. Mm-hmm. And, it's like, okay, you got to say this line, but then we're going to have, we're going to have a camera car following you. We're going to have a camera inside the car, and we need you to, quote unquote, drive off into the sunset.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the cars were stick back in that time, which was another caveat: is can you find an actor who can actually drive manual for camera? Which is, there's a lot of stories about that. I literally had production one time pull me aside after I booked this job. We're doing a fitting. The next day we're going to be shooting in Malibu. And the guy's like, look, I need you to, be honest with me and level with me. Can you actually drive? And I'm like, and now I'm getting nervous. I'm like, what does he, in my mind, I'm like, what does he mean by that? Do I need to drift the car? Like, Fast and the Furious? I'm like, look, I said, I can drive a car for camera. I'm not going to slide the car. I'm not going to do 180s into a parking lot. But if you're uncomfortable, let me put your mind at ease. I can do this. Mm-hmm. And you can see him just go, oh, thank you. I'm like, well, what's going on? He's like, we had an actor who swore that he could drive for our last job. Mm. And I don't know, for anybody who's listening, if they ever come to Los Angeles, there's a street called La Cienega as you hit Sunset, and it's basically just a big long uphill. And the story is this guy lied and said that he could drive, or he fudged it to get the job, and he didn't realize that not only was it going to be on an uphill, was the shot they wanted, but it was going to be in a manual. Mm. Well, I should know.
Yeah, that's not the street you want for a manual transmission.
Probably 3 or 4 takes in, they realized, as his white knuckling it and scared that he couldn't do the job. So they fired him, and they had a crew guy. They needed someone. So they threw one of the crew guys, I think, one of the grips. They threw him in to finish the job for the day. So this guy was just, freaked out. Mm-hmm. And I was like, hey, look, we're going to have a great shoot, and we're going to knock it out of the park. But just so you know, I'm not going to be jumping this car, doing anything like Italian job. Mm-hmm. And that kind of work was great because, I still do it to this day. I love commercial work, but it was a real blessing because it was the start where I was making a living, not making a lot, but making a living as a working actor. And it wasn't anything sexy. It was just the fact that, boy, you book the job, which is such a win. You get on set, which is such a win, and then you get that paycheck. Mm-hmm. And it was the validation that, okay, I can do this. And actually, in a weird way, I've got a wonderful family, but it was a validation from my parents because they just, it's also a weird situation when you're coming from a world where you're getting a steady paycheck. It's a salary job. Just the idea of commission, really. The fact that you don't, it's not that anything is for sure, but it's not secured, so they were concerned about that. Like, well, how many jobs can you book to make a living? Like this, all the questions that someone who doesn't understand that world would ask. But once I started to make a living and then, make that first year where, okay, bills are paid, you could just see their anxiety subside a little bit.
Yeah. So at what point did your agent sort of take over a lot of this? And again, going back to some of those early credits like 90210, Dead Space, Wicked Games, you had a small role, G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra. Maybe you can just talk about like the actual logistics, because I know there's actors all the time, oh, how can I get in this movie or that movie? What were those actual steps to getting, booking those roles?
It's such a great question, and it's a question that I don't think you ever stop asking. Because I've got peers of mine that are basically movie stars, but there's always this. It's because it's relationships. The talent, the talent has to execute without question, right? Whether it's an athlete or whether it's a musician or an actor, but to get into the playground to play, the sandbox, it's all relationship based. And I had a manager at the time for theatrical. So what that meant was, she would be looking for theatrical roles for me to audition for, which was something like G.I. Joe. But then I had a commercial agent who was separate, and she would be looking at roles that I could book as a commercial actor. Sometimes there would be a bleed over, but for the most part, that was kind of like, they each kind of had their own genres, their own zones, to where I had some success with both. But to be honest with you, I had a really strong commercial agent. And what I mean by that is there was a salesmanship quality, because I'm a product at that time. That's what we are. We are products, and they're selling brands, they're selling talent, they're selling products. Gunner Wright is a product to service this particular commercial brand for your story. It's your script. It's your production. I don't care if I'm the lead. The humility of it is I'm just serving your story. So my commercial agent was really strong, had great relationships, and so I worked a lot with her. And then over the years, I found I was blessed to find versions of her in other areas of our business. Amazing voiceover agents. I've got an incredible theatrical agency who that's what they focus on. So I was really blessed to learn from my commercial agent how strong she was, and then really seek out in other areas from voiceover, print, on camera, theatrical, other agents that were as strong. How do I get those? Well, there was even, there's an interesting dichotomy in our business, because it's not necessarily like, for example, in the stunt world, it is really word of mouth because of the safety, because of kind of the hierarchy, the brotherhood, sisterhood of the trade, and the trust issues that come into play, mainly because of the safety aspect of it, is you don't just, if you actually were one of the main stunt coordinators in Hollywood, just because I'm your friend doesn't mean you're going to throw me a bone. You need to know that I have the skill set to be able to do the job. And so there is that within the stunt community and some of that applies as acting talent as well. Meaning I can send you an email, I can make the phone call, but if it's not coming from the right place, it's just junk mail. It's just something that someone's not going to necessarily, dive too deep into that. Unless it's a referral, unless it's really someone who's like going to put themselves on the line and say, hey, you need to check out this guy's reel, or you need to have this meeting. And that's really where agents, that's where they come into play, whether it's casting, production, vetting you, and so there were certain situations where I remember needing a good voiceover agent, and I was sending out emails, and hey, I'd love to at least, I had some work, I had a tiny little body of work that I could send them as clips, And at that level, they just weren't soliciting. There was unsolicited materials were not allowed. And I just was beating my head against the wall, because it's like, okay, I don't even know what productions are being, because they're different than breakdowns for on camera. It's like a whole nother world. And I remember there was a place in Burbank, like a voiceover, it's basically a sound studio. But actors go in there would pay like a time slot to basically lay down a voiceover audition. And then some productions like Disney might actually book out parts of the rooms and actually use that for voiceover production. And I remember I went in, and Andrew, the guy who runs it, I think it's Voice Tracks West on Ventura, great place. He had a little pegboard in it, and it was you pay like $40 or $50, and it was a showcase, a voiceover showcase. And I just remember going, you know what? I hate the idea of that, but I'm going to do it. I'm just going to go for it. And if nothing else, I'll learn something, and I'll meet some great people. And so I do it. I pay the money. I go to Voice Tracks West for this agency showcase. There was a handful of actors, and an agency representation group were there. And we went in with a car voiceover audition and a little clip of a video game audition, just to kind of do the read. And I did it. And that night before I left, one of the reps said, "Hey, we'd love to talk to you. Can we schedule a meeting this week?" I said, "Sure." And so I went in, and it was that perfect opportunity of or the cliche of preparation meets opportunity.
Yep.
And the risk of that. And it was that scenario of, if I wouldn't have paid the money, if I wouldn't have gone forward with that, I wouldn't have the team that I have today in that particular segment. But the reality was, I had emailed them and tried to get in touch with them before that, but just based off of the machine, and I totally get it and understand it, because they're such a powerhouse and they get so many people wanting a piece of them, that their standard policy is, we don't even open that stuff. So it took that risk, that financial risk, and also just the frustration of doing something like that to at least cut through the chatter. They saw the talent, and then, like I said, it was that preparation met opportunity. So,
yeah, and that's a great story. I'm curious, over the years, obviously I've never been an actor, so I've never been personally involved in this, but there's always been a lot of argument about whether these casting director workshops, you pay $100 or whatever and go. And there's always been some sort of debate whether these are ethical to the actors and that kind of thing. What is your take on these casting director workshops? It sounds like that's kind of what you were doing with this one.
My take is, and I've done a handful of them, is this is what's interesting to me all these years later is, I say do it if you want to get something out of it. And what I mean by that is it not coming from a selfish place, but if you want to stretch your wings as a talent, if you want to meet some great people, if you want to just use it for what it can be, it's no different when I was racing motorcycles. It's like, if we're going to practice on a Thursday night practice, I'm going to pay an entry fee to basically be able to use their track to test and to ride. Now, I don't have my own practice track. I don't have my own test track. And on top of that, even though it's just practice, I'm competitive. I want to pit myself with some people, and I just want to get out there and mix it up. And so with being an actor, unless you're doing it by yourself with a camera, you want to work off of people. And if you need to pay to be able to play, to be able to do that, then that's up to you. However, I think where there's a misconception is, you're going to pay to go do this thing and you're going to get something out of it, like an agent, or you're going to, get this golden Willy Wonka ticket. And that's like me going to your barbecue and hoping with the pretense that there's going to be a lot of girls and I'm going to walk away with a girlfriend. That's just not how life works. Yeah. And I think when you let go of that, and you, as the driver in your car of life, when you're like, okay, I have some time, I've got some money. I know this is a great, let's say, casting director. I know this is a really cool opportunity to at least, act in front of whoever that might be. And if you feel like you want to go do it, but you don't do it because you think that it's specifically going to lead to something else. Because then you get, there's a false sense of, if I do this, that I'm expected to get that, which that's not the way it is.
Yeah. That's such excellent advice. I'm curious too, sort of the next question is that, again, thinking back on some of your bigger credits, the G.I. Joe, you're in Clint Eastwood's J. Edgar. Were these casting directors, when you went in and auditioned for those, were those casting directors that you had read for many times before and kind of they knew who you were? Or were these casting directors that they had not seen you and you kind of just happened to be the right person at the right time?
Definitely the latter. What you understand also is and it's real world business. It's like the top tier talent, the top tier principal roles in the big production studio projects. A lot of that's, it's already pre-done. Those roles are filled. Everything from we need this movie star to basically be a part of this project, to be able to get it funded, or they're a producer because they want, the financial aspects of that after it's done. When you get down to smaller roles, it's a wider net. It's a wider net that's brought out to a wider amount of agencies and a wider amount of talent. There's very few times when, let's say you and I are producers and we're like, we want an unnamed person for this particular role. It's not about money. It's not about cachet. It's about finding someone. And we've got casting, like what's it, Spielberg or some of these people would look for a kid, look for a child.
Like
for a
Harry Potter,
role.
sure, yeah.
Yeah, and they would literally have these multiple casting sessions around the world to find that one specific, talent or untalent, someone who didn't really even have a background in acting, but this was perfect for them. So when you get down to some of these roles, it is literally a wider net to where, with G.I. Joe, they were looking for a Secret Service agent. I remember going in for Rona Cress, and I just tried to throw my spin on it, and I book it, and it was wonderful because it was literally like I wouldn't say Super Bowl, but it's like being on it's the main stage. You are literally at the height of a studio project. Where everything. I remember my first day on set. We're shooting downtown. Arnold Vosloo, there's Dennis Quaid, there's tents and tents of food and coffee, and it's just this circus. It's the biggest thing that I've seen, even larger than the first times I would do like the Warner Brothers backlot for the television show. I mean, this was the machine. And I remember I hear a motorcycle, obviously. I turn around and I see this like Harley V-Rod coming, and because of the security of this particular of that day, just no one was just cruising into set. It's like you knew someone belonged. So I'm seeing this motorcycle, I'm seeing this Harley ride, and they're basically ushering him to right by Crafty, and it's sprinkly. It's like, I don't know, 7 or 8 in the morning, and they're basically finding a little spot for him to park his bike, and his helmet comes off, and it's Harrison Ford.
Wow.
And so I'm like, oh my God, that's Harrison Ford. First off, it's cool he's on the motorcycle, but second of all, like, I didn't see him on the call sheet. Like, what's he doing here? And of course, there's ADs and everyone's coming by, and he's hanging out for a little bit, and then he goes into hair and makeup, I'm thinking, I don't see him on the call sheet. Now, what's he doing? And about 15, 20 minutes later, they're calling me to go into hair and makeup, and he's there just for a few more minutes, and then he leaves. And then the main hair and makeup person, she's like, "Hey, Gunnar, come sit down." And we start talking, and she's wonderful, and she's an older woman. She's been around the industry for a long time. And I'm like, I think her name was Karen. I'm like, Karen, what's Harrison doing here? And she's like, "Oh, honey, I've been cutting his hair for years." Like, he called me, let me get his hair cut. And I said, "Well, I'm on set, and I think his son lives downtown LA." And he's like, I'll come by the set, get my hair cut and come hang out for a bit. And it was like such a wonderful moment of real world, what it really means to be in our business. There's a ton of amazing, humble, hardworking people that love what they do, and they are very good at what they do, but they also don't take it too serious. I mean, it's a business, right? And it was such a wonderful moment because I was just, it was a grounding moment for me. It wasn't anything over the top. It was just, in some ways, I actually loved Harrison even more, and just that whole idea of, he came by. It was probably more of just that relationship that he had with, that group, and then got a chance. I think he watched a couple of takes, and then he took off. And it was wonderful.
What a great story. So let's talk a little bit about The Pinch. That's the movie that I did where we met. And I remember talking to you a couple of times about just memorizing the lines and that sort of just technical actory stuff. And so I'll let you sort of tell the story. But one of the things that impressed me and the other producers, when you showed up for the audition, you knew the sides inside and out. You were incredibly prepared. And I can say this on set. I've never worked with an actor that was so hardworking and as prepared as you. Maybe you can talk to us a little bit about how, I mean, I was the writer of the script and you probably knew it a lot better than I did. How did you actually get to the point where you could memorize all those lines? And what do you prepare for an audition like this? And especially something like this, because my movie was super low budget. Certainly, as you just talked about, you had done some much, much bigger projects. How do you get yourself motivated to give your A game to something that's, kind of a small project? And then are there some sort of real tips and tricks about how do you memorize the lines accurately? And just what does your process look like for that?
The process has grown over the years like anything. You throw away the bad bath water, and you keep some of the things in your toolbox that are just that tried and true. They're maybe not the sexiest tool, but there's a reason why a hammer and a pair of pliers are
number one.
They're a staple. They're a staple in your toolbox, and duct tape, by the way.
Yeah.
But some of it, I look back. Some of it is my work ethic from my father and my mother, just what they instilled in me as a kid, and then going into my racing career. You can have the coolest bike, you could have the best gear, the helmet, the goggles and everything. But if you don't have the execution when the gate drops, there's I wouldn't say a poser mentality, but there is a rubber meets the road reality to performance. I definitely grew up in a culture where you had first, second, third place trophies. You didn't get a trophy for 12th, and so I brought that, especially not knowing my future of when you're getting paid. And, there wasn't an assurity. I didn't have, an unlimited amount of financial resources. So it was kind of like feast or famine, twisting the throttle of an approach. And then the other thing about it was I was really blessed early on in my career to meet some amazing big named talent that around that time, it was like everyone was going out and partying, and you started to have this paparazzi machine that was really becoming just this, it went past like the entertainment news shows, and it was just bleeding into every quality or every form of media, the fixation of who wore it best and all this stuff. And I was really blessed to meet some amazing talent that they just never did any of that. They're the ones that were going to bed at 9 because they had a 6 a.m. call time, and they'd go hit the gym at 4 a.m. because they needed to be, on set. And I remember early on just being so impressed by what I thought was a movie star, or what I thought was someone, based off of that kind of paparazzi world. And then the brass tacks, again, non-sexy reality of, no, they're not doing any of that. Because they're studying with their coach, or they're studying the work that they've got to do for the following day, and they're going to the gym super early in the morning. Like they're not out, hitting the clubs or that kind of craziness. And so, in a weird way, I was like, God, if they're doing it and they're doing that, and I'm down here just starting, then that's something that I need to pull for myself. And so, some of that was a blessing to carry over into my career. But then the more I started to meet people like you, in the sense that someone who's not just, you get outside of the fact of, okay, my community is actors. It's like you start to meet writers and producers and people that are creating their own, especially when you were doing it, even though it's not that long ago, there was still real money involved, and crewing up and putting together a production meant a great deal. And I was blessed to meet a handful of people and just appreciate, because I couldn't do it. I don't want to direct. I mean, maybe there's something that I might want to, financially help be a part of at some point in my career, but I love doing what I do. And I also realize I'm just a cog in the wheel. Even if I'm the star of a project, I'm just part of that vehicle. But I really appreciated more and more someone who took the time to write a script and then who's going to budget it, crew it, and make it happen to where when we got to work with each other, I treated you, I treated you like I would Paramount G.I. Joe, or, or a Warner Brothers project, because the only difference is that we didn't have a studio and you didn't have $100 million, but you still put in the blood, sweat, and tears. And it's like, how could I, even if you just called me and I said, okay, yeah, I'll do your project, how could I do anything less? At least, I think you always tend to grow and to expand on your talents if you continue to have that childlike student mindset, like I want to continue to learn and get better. But yeah, I just couldn't imagine myself doing your project with any less focus and intensity as I
give us some real practical tips. And I really do. It was noticed and appreciated, Gunnar. So give us some practical tips. How did you just get through the script? And one of the things that really helped the production, since you knew every single line backwards and forwards, we could kind of skip around. You could kind of help the other actors who maybe weren't as off book as you. And so all that stuff was very, very things. But how did you get to that point? How did you actually memorize all those lines?
Well, because like a carpenter, if you can't hammer a nail,
you can't
build a house. Carpenter 101. I think long ago it was like, hey, look, at a minimum, you hit your mark and you know your lines. It's like you don't even have to know them. You don't have to be a great actor, but a child can, memorize lines. And I really do believe like that David Mamet, I love his book where he just talks about some of the tools, the nuts and bolts of an actor is, you come to set early. If you're on time, you're late. You come with your integrity and a humility that you are just part of the team. And you know your lines, and your lines could change. Don't get flustered by that, because you're not going to, they're not going to, if they change the scene, or even worse, if you've studied to be ready for scene 2 today, but because of weather and some other problems, we're going to actually have to do scene 4. You're malleable, but you know your lines, and you're ready to be a part of a team. And that was something that I was taught early on, and it wasn't anything, again, nothing sexy, just like that's par for the course, because there's no time for ego, especially nowadays with just the nature of the business. There might have been a moment in time where even directors or certain crew people could be prima donnas or have this kind of like, I'll do half the work, but you're going to rely on my name. And I didn't have the name. I wasn't a movie star, and I didn't want to come across as anything close to someone who is just, not prepared and they're going to on set.
Yeah. And so give us some actual practical tips. And my recollection was, because I think we had this discussion years ago, and I think you said you recorded the entire thing. You would listen to it over and over again, just go through each scene. Tell us that. So what are the actual tools and the steps to memorizing this stuff? Well,
it's not a one size fits all. It's like if anybody saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where Leonardo DiCaprio is, he's basically recording the scene with all the different actors, and then he's leaving space for his dialogue. It's a wonderful tool to use. There's another one that one of my acting coaches, Joseph Perlman, amazing acting coach here in LA. Again, just very brass tacks, nuts and bolts. But one of his things is you basically say your scene out loud, just read it, don't put anything on it, and then you like a pinwheel, you put a mark, and then after 5 or 6 marks, it becomes a wheel, and you do as many wheels as you can, and you're not putting any inflection on it, you're not putting any emotion into it, you're just out loud speaking it, and you're doing it standing, not sitting. So you're kind of in your body and you're working it. And again, my problem is I have a short-term memory. So like whatever I learned 2 days ago, I don't even remember what I said. I have there's other talent. There's other, as you being a director, being a writer, producer, you'll have talent someday where they have a photographic memory. They'll hear it once and they've got it, and they've got it for good. It's in their bones. And you'll hear major movie stars laugh and talk about that doing press, where their co-star, that's how they worked, but they couldn't. They literally had to just, hammer it into their brain to be able to get it in. So every actor is going to be different from that sense. But I would say for me, it was a combination of in the iPhone, just recording the scene out loud and giving myself some spaces to just be able to kind of time it, just be able to know it. And then other aspects of it would just be just the blood, sweat, and tears of going through it. But, the other thing is that, as you can imagine, there's all these different ways and creative ways to do it. When it means something to you, it stands out. There's certain scenes are easier to memorize than others. The big monologues can be difficult. I will say that over the years, doing a lot of commercial work, a lot of car stuff, things that maybe not even would be seen by the public, but they're for industrial, they're for the car company, where it's a lot of technical jargon with navies and this and that. And, you in those kinds of environments where you're having to learn a lot of dialogue that you're not even quite sure what that means. Like it's a weird technical term, and you're even asking them, hey, what is this? Oh yeah, this is part of the fuel injection, blah, 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 blah. Those things would definitely help kind of tune the muscle of memory, to where when I got to say stop or I'll shoot, I'm like, okay, I got that line. I didn't do it. But, and then the pressure, the thing you're trying to do is you're trying to tune it up to where, here's the thing that people forget about. It's like, it's not enough that you memorize it. Okay, you got it. You got it in your condition. But now all of a sudden, we moved the scene around and we're losing light. We're behind. And we've got about 20 minutes left, and we really need you to try to knock this out max 2 takes. And now you've got pressure. Oh, and by the way, you got the car, you got to pull the firearm, you got to do the thing, say the line, kiss the girl, and then get back in the car and drive away. We're going to do it in one shot, and we're losing light. Let's hurry up. Now all of a sudden, it's a whole different ballgame. So, even like with Joseph, he would have a thing where you would be doing your dialogue, but holding a tennis ball or like bouncing a tennis ball against a wall, just to try to, be doing something else and not just focusing on the dialogue, because again, you don't want to be in your head, especially if you have to work off of another actor. But there might be 3 or 4 different things that the director wants you to do. Yeah, I actually want you to go pick up that, especially if it's commercial, go pick up that cup and go to the fridge, open it up, do this, and then, I want you to say your line here, not here, but right here, as you close the refrigerator door. There's such a technicality to that, you might not be able to rehearse that at home, but I will play with that. And even who I love, I'm drawing a blank, but British actor. Please help me. He was Christopher Nolan. He was Alfred in Christopher Nolan's Batman.
Oh, Michael Caine, yeah.
Michael Caine. Yeah. It's such a cliche, but it's true. How he would spend time in his hotel room if he was on location and practice, just use the room. He would start saying the line like maybe from the bathroom, and then want to have his line, his dialogue done before he sat down in the hotel chair. He would just play. He'd pour himself a glass, because depending on the scene, he wanted to be free to be able to say the dialogue if he was standing on his head. And that is something that I have used time and time again, because as you know, being a filmmaker, it isn't just black and white. You even might have an idea in your head how you want it, but now we're on set and a cool opportunity opens up. And to be able to have that freedom to where, someone's not, oh my God, I learned it this way, I can't do it this way. It stilts it, and it also makes it more difficult for that magical moment of mistakes and play and what kids do. You know, there's a wonderful thing about, you know, being that kind of Peter Pan in your mindset of don't look at it as right and wrong, just possibilities.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Gunnar,
yeah.
Say that again. Well, I really appreciate you. I really appreciate you. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, we're getting the cutoff on. Go ahead.
I was going to say, keep it open for endless possibilities, but know that those endless possibilities are only as wide as the director allows you. You know, it's like you want to give yourself the freedom to play, but know that you could have something as specific based off of what production needs for that particular scene. You want to, you know, be ready for all of that. As much freedom and play as you can to as specific as I need you to say that line as you close the car door.
Yeah. Very, very sound advice. Well, Gunnar, I really appreciate you coming on and talking with me today. I've gone way over our allotted time, so I apologize for that. What's the best way for people to keep up with what you're doing? Are you on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, anything like that? I'll round up for the show notes and people can just kind of follow along.
You know, I'm not on social media, but I get hit up by a lot of, especially Dead Space video game fans. Just my website, GunnarWright.com. They can email me, you know, through that, through my people. And yeah, it's a journey, and I hope to be working with some of the listeners, maybe on set in the future.
Hopefully. So, well, Gunnar, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. If you enjoyed this interview, do check out my other podcast over at sellingyourscreenplay.com, where I've got hundreds of interviews. They're mostly with producers, directors, and writers, but there are some great interviews with actors as well. But even the episodes with directors, producers, and writers, I think often have a lot of good information in those interviews for actors as well, even if it's just to understand that part of the business better. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review anywhere you find this podcast. You can probably leave a review, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, or just retweet it or share it on Facebook. These reviews and shares are very helpful to let the various platforms know what people think of the podcast. And with some good reviews, it can really help get the podcast in front of more people. So if you have a minute and wouldn't mind just leaving a nice review, it would be very much appreciated. That's the show. Thank you for listening.